Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Maker's Bar. We are trying to create 1 million leaders. I'm your host today, Troy Goldenberg. I'm with Representative Naquetta Ricks. She's also a business owner and founder. She's in the Colorado State Legislature. I'm very excited to share your story with y'all. Naquetta, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, of course. I'm super excited to share your story. I was actually reading a bit about you before we got on here, and it is really an incredible story. And so if you wanted to start that either from childhood, school, wherever you want to begin sharing that journey.
Sure. I'm so happy to be here. I am a state legislator here in Colorado, out of Aurora, Colorado, which is right outside of Denver. And my journey into politics and leadership, started from Liberia, West Africa. I am an immigrant that came in 1980 after a bloody civil military coup in the country. The My mother's fiance, who was a government official, was killed by firing squad, and basically the government was overthrown, and we had soldiers that came to our house on the day after the coup happened, and they basically went from house to house looking for government officials. My mother and After they searched our home for several hours and held my mom at gunpoint, they found my mom's fiance, Dr. Bright, and they dragged him and her to our driveway. They ended up throwing Dr. Bright in the back of a pickup truck, and um, by the grace of God, they left my mom. After several days, the soldiers had rounded up 13 ministers of the government. They went through no really real trial. It was like a military tribunal, and they sentenced them to death. They tied them all to light poles on the beach, accused them of corruption, but they had no way of defending themselves, and they shot all of them by firing squad. It was very bloody, very traumatic. After the soldiers left our home, we knew that we were not safe. So my mother, my sister, myself, and we had a cousin that was living with us. We all packed one suitcase, a piece, and went to another family member's home in the city. And my mother then asked for a leave of absence, medical leave of absence, because it was very traumatic. And that was how we ended up coming to the United States by June. The military coup happened in like April of 1980. By June of 1980, we had moved to the United States, and we first went to Chicago, but then ended up in Colorado. And Colorado is where I've grown up. I've lived in Aurora for most of my life, and a lot of you may have heard about Aurora, Colorado. We got famous, especially after President Trump decided to wage war against the Venezuelan migrants that were in our city, and there was a really negative narrative about the migrants running around, all gang members, which was a bunch of falsehoods and lies. But at any rate, I grew up in Aurora, Colorado, which is a very diverse city. The city has over 169 languages that are spoken in the public schools, and is the fourth most diverse city in the country. And we are from all over the place, what is Asia, Africa, Europe, um, we're from everywhere, South America, and everywhere in between. But I got elected in 2020 after a very tough race between me and another Democratic opponent. And and I've been serving in the state house since 2020. I've won. We run every 2 years, so I just won my third election in 2024, and I'm serving another 2-year term right now in the Colorado State House.
Congratulations. That is a very sad, but also just very incredible story that you have. And it's very inspiring to see everything you've done since. And as we get into the politics, I do want to get into what inspired you to run and all of those things very quickly. I would love to hear about the business background. When did you start your own business? What made you want to do that? How did that all come about?
And I think, I've always had an entrepreneur streak. I remember growing up when I was even in Liberia selling milk candy. And, milk candy is made from condensed milk, and you kind of make it, it's kind of like a little toffee kind of thing. And you put it in jars and you sell it for like, I don't know, 5 cents a piece or whatever. But I think I've always been in the, uh, have that business streak. I've done different entrepreneurial pursuits around the fashion industry. I did like a traveling boutique for some time. But again, as an immigrant, I think, we, I noticed that in Colorado, we did not have any voices, or like, there was the Denver Chamber of Commerce, but there was no African Chamber of Commerce. So me and some other business owners founded the African Chamber of Commerce here in Colorado, and basically is to advocate and build economic wealth for African immigrant populations of Colorado. We do a lot of work within the Black. Americans, with African Americans, and with African immigrants here in Colorado, and everybody else in between. Uh, business has always been a place where you're able to control your own destiny as far as, you can have a successful company. We know that small businesses are the bread and butter, or the engines of our economy. They can start and then grow and scale. And our goal with the African Chamber of Commerce is to help businesses be more sustainable, help them to get access to capital, help them to basically get to a place where they're able to scale and thrive. We do that by offering classes at the chamber, such as entrepreneurship classes. We have a 12-week program where we bring in small businesses and we take them everywhere from, just from the very beginning of their businesses to everywhere in between. We help them with business planning, we help them with websites, we bring in experts to talk to them. We also have people come in to talk about, bookkeeping, and we do QuickBook classes and business workshops. And, we're in the process of also now working on becoming a community development financial institution where we can offer business loans, at lower interest rates. And basically, CDFIs don't function as a bank, because a bank will ask you for the traditional 3 year, 3 years of taxes. But we're able to help people based on how much investment or equity they have already contributed to their business, or their reputation, or things that we weigh are a little bit different than what the traditional banks will be expecting. So we've done a lot of different things in that realm, and being a big part of our community, also helping with COVID, helping people to apply for the EIDL loans, and the payroll protection loans that happened during COVID. We helped vaccinate our communities. We did 8,000 vaccinations, in the community during COVID, to ensure that our communities were safe. So the African Chamber has developed into a very trusted voice for the African communities of Colorado.
That's incredible. Just an incredible thing that you got started, and you got that started pre your role in Colorado State Legislature. This is pre 2020.
Yes. So the chamber is 10 years old. We celebrated 10 years last year. It was started in late in October 2014, and again, it was because of the fact that there was no chamber of commerce to speak or advocate for African immigrant businesses, and also because we were very proud that there was a mall that got started called the Afrique Mall, and basically it was owned by African immigrants, and there were a lot of stores and shops in there. The mall didn't succeed, but I think just the pride of ownership, and seeing you see a lot of stuff. You see Korean Town, you see Chinatown, but this was like an African immigrant-owned mall, and that was inspiring for us. And that's when we realized that there were a lot of thriving businesses out here, but you needed a way of being, coming together to collaborate and to advocate, for resources.
Yeah, absolutely. To build that community up. And that feels like a natural transition into government. And when you were deciding to make that first move and run for your first election there, what was the big thing that kind of pushed you over the edge 2018, 2019, whenever you decided to make that decision?
So, I ran for so my first I never saw myself being a politician. So it wasn't like, oh, wow, this is my goal in life. I want to be a politician. But I've always been passionate about community and serving community. And I think based on the fact that as a refugee and, someone coming out of Africa and getting opportunity to create my version of the American dream, I've always wanted to see people reach their full potential. And so that meant I've served on my church board. I've served at the local public school for the Aurora Public School Education Foundation to help to raise money for kids to go to college. I've done a lot of things in service. And in 2013, I was approached by one of the representatives, a Senator Angelo Williams, who asked me to do a class called Emerge. Emerge is where they teach women how to run for office and how to run their campaigns, how to build up, do a stump speech, how to raise money, and all of these things. So after taking the class, then they started to ask me, what are you going to run for? And I kept telling them, I don't know that I'm going to run for anything. But what are you passionate about? And I was passionate about education, making sure that people had accessible, affordable, accountable education. So I ran for the Board of Regents, which was my first run. That was in 2014. It was a big race because in Colorado, they do elect our Board of Regents, which is the board of the CU, the University of Colorado systems. And I ran for that seat. It was like a congressional seat, basically, because it's kind of done by congressional districts. And it was a big race for me. I lost that race, but I learned so much by knocking on the doors of my neighbors and listening to their hopes and their dreams. I also realized that I had a very it was natural just engaging people at the doors. They liked to see me coming. I loved engaging them. I loved hearing about their hopes, their dreams, and aspirations for what they wanted the future to hold for their children and their kids. And then I also learned a lot from the community that we knew a lot about, the presidential race, but people would not know who their city council person was, or they didn't know who their state representative was. And every election, I went out, whether I was running or not. And so they got used to seeing me. So I ran for that race, I lost. Then in 2017, I ran for city council and I came in third in that race. At that point, people said to me, well, Naquetta, you're very smart, but maybe politics is not your thing. After President Trump got elected the first time, and he came out with so much negative narratives around, excuse me,
We're fine.
about immigrants, it inspired me to say, wow, this is not who immigrants are at all. There's so much that immigrants contribute to this country. So, looking at the state legislature, there was no one there that had the lived experience that I brought. Um, being an immigrant and all, and the experiences that I could share and the things that I had to offer there. So I decided to run when an open seat came up in 2019. My state representative ended up going to the Senate, so it created an open seat. Another Democrat had already declared for the seat. He declared like early 2019, like January. And I didn't jump into the race until December of 2019. When
Oh
I
wow.
jumped in, there was a lot of, yeah, there was a lot of groundswell, like, oh my God, she's running again, and all of this stuff. And so this my opponent, Democratic opponent, had already locked down all the endorsements and everything. And as I started to run, COVID struck in March of 2020. That was when COVID came,
Mhm.
and I was only able to raise roughly about 12 to 13,000. My opponent got a bunch of independent expenditures that were spent on his behalf because he was the party favorite, and basically it came down to a very tough primary in June of 2020. When the ballots we have mail-in ballot system here, which comes out for 3 weeks, and then you have the final night. So when the ballots dropped, I had enough money to send out one mailer at the very beginning, and then another one about midway in the process. So two mailers. My opponent, on the other hand, had, 2 to 3 mailers every day that came out on his behalf during that 3 week process. About a week into the process, I get a call from a constituent who said to me, she said, Naquetta, I just got this large negative mailer that your opponent took out against you. Is any of this information true? So I panicked. I ran to my mailbox trying to find out what's been said about me. So sure enough, they had like this 11 by 14 piece of paper that had, they were questioning whether I lived in the district. They said the perennial politician is at it again, all of these different things they were saying. So I had to get on Facebook. I mean, I was basically, almost panicked. I was shook by seeing that. I was like, oh my God, I don't have any money to respond to this. So I called my consultant at Emerge, and she said, well, don't let him throw you off your game. You have what you have. You just got to keep pushing, keep going forward with your plan. So I got on Facebook, and I had to talk about the mailer and talk about how, I am the Aurora girl. I'm fighting for us. I'm fighting for Aurora, hometown values, dark money's coming into our community, and it's like, and so I basically just had to keep fighting. And on the night of the final night of the elections, the polls closed at 7 p.m. As I was getting dressed to go and meet my party, I got a call from someone who had worked on the campaign, and she said, "Hey, you're not doing too bad. The numbers just came in. You are at 49%, and your opponent is at 51%." So, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I went to the restaurant, and we celebrated. We kept watching the returns and the ballots come in. By the end of the night, we had gotten to a 50-50 split on the votes.
Wow.
And it was like, and there was not a huge number between us, but the numbers were still being counted. The next day, when we got up, uh, nothing, not until 12 noon. And when they updated for the first time, that the next day, I was ahead by 70 votes. And so the tide had turned in my favor. Then by 2 o'clock, I finally was able to try to get lunch, because I had been like just nervous the whole day.
Oh,
Then
absolutely.
I got someone called me and said, "Hey, guess what? They just updated again, and now you're at 200 and something votes ahead." And at that point, I was like, "Oh my God, I could win this," because I knew that there weren't that many more votes to count. So I started laughing and crying at the same time. It was just kind of like crazy. I was like hysterical. I'm like, "Oh my God." Anyhow, by 4 o'clock, the trend continued. They counted and updated again, and the numbers continue to move in my favor. At that point, it moved into like 300 and something, and it was at that point that I declared myself as the winner. And so I won in a very spectacular way. It was like by 404 votes, against my opponent, who had over 160,000 plus spent compared to my $13,000, basically that I had. And I looked at that as, this was my time. This was something that was ordained for me to be there. And so I'm there for such a time as this, and to make sure that our voices and the people who don't typically get heard in these spaces and in these halls of power, that I get to speak up for my community and people like me, people like my family members, my friends, and the people around me, who are just ordinary people looking to create their own version of success and to thrive, so.
Yeah, that is amazing. Your story is just better and better the more that we get to hear about it. And I love it. And once you're there, so that's 2020 now, 2021, you're in office. What have you learned?
Yes.
Like, what were the things that you weren't expecting that you've learned a lot here? And then with those lessons, how have you been able to go forward and make a bigger difference?
So yeah, so 2021, I'm totally green. And people always ask the question, they say, is it what you thought it was going to be? Well, I had no idea what I thought what it was going to be. I, I don't know. Yeah, I've gone to the Capitol a few times and I knocked doors for politicians. Like I knocked door for Barack Obama in 2012. But, I've never really served in office or like shadowed a person around the Capitol. So I came in kind of green. Politics is a beast. You have so many different stakeholders, the lobby, the governor's office, my constituents, business owners, the nonprofit, so many different people. So I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about negotiation. I've learned a lot about, trying to fight for the interest. And it's not going to be easy. I've had to bring bills that are going to make a difference, move the envelope. You want to thread the needle. You have to make sure you're stakeholding and getting everybody at the table. Otherwise, people can complain against you. We have to fight. A lot of times, we even fight. We have to fight the governor's office because like today, I basically, I got notice yesterday that he hated one of my bills that I'm bringing, which is going to protect people for security deposits. Like a tenant, if they are leaving an apartment, we want to make sure that they're able to get the deposits back. And if not, that there are penalties for landlords who keep security deposits that they should be returning to tenants. And he's telling me that he doesn't like the bill. So, right there, that's a fight. So not only am I fighting the lobby, fighting the executive office, and so many others. But it's a game of, strategy, listening a lot, negotiating. Politics can surprise you. People will stab you in the back. But then you also have the wins when your policies get ahead and you're making differences in areas that needed to. And I have many examples of that. In 2021, I'm proud to talk about the Immigration Defense Fund. Um, this was a bill that set up a fund to help people who were going through the deportation process. Deportation is the only court in the land when you're going through that immigration process where if you are going to be deported and you don't have money to get legal counsel, you will not get any legal counsel. So you can be a child, you could be a 15, 12-year-old girl from Mexico, and you're sitting there and they're about to deport you. If you don't have a lawyer, the lawyers will come and they'll speak and talk over you in the courtroom, and you will be deported. But if you have a lawyer, you're 7 times more likely to get, bail and a bond, and you're able to get out there and live your life. So Colorado set up that first of a kind fund to get people to support people going through that process. I also helped in my background is as a mortgage broker. So my small business is as a mortgage brokerage company. So I've helped a lot of people purchase homes, which is building that piece of the American dream and building generational wealth for your family. But if you live in a homeowners association here in Colorado, the law is that the HOA, which is the homeowners association, seems to have a lot of rights. which is codified in the statutes to allow them to, you know, take homeowners to court. And in most cases, people are just working people trying to pay their mortgage. They will not fight back. And so we've been able to tip the scales in the direction of the homeowners, because it really should not be an adversarial relationship. These homeowners are the ones who are paying the HOAs to manage their communities, to keep the standards up in the community, but yet they seem like they go against homeowners all the time. So we've been able to tilt the scales of justice in favor of the homeowners, give them a little bit more, level the playing field a little bit more. I did a towing bill, which was a towing customer bill of rights, which stopped tow truck companies from towing your car and eventually selling it if you could not pay the bill. So what was happening in Colorado is they would tow your car, and within the first 24 hours, it's $300 to get your car out. So if you did not have the money to get your car, they will charge you a storage fee every day, maybe $50 to $60. By the end of 30 days, let's say you get a paycheck and you're like, oh, I'm going to go redeem my car. By then, that bill has been run up to almost thousands of dollars. Okay. And then the tow truck companies had, the right to sell your car at auction to recover their fees. So we stopped that from happening. Basically, the term in law is called a possessory lien. We stopped them from having a possessory lien where they could just take your car and sell it. So if, your car gets towed and you're unable to pay the bill, they have to set up a payment plan with you. You need to pay at least a minimum of $60 or something, and then make payment arrangements with them so that you're able to get your car back and then continue to take your kids to school, continue to go to work. Because so many people's lives were upended because of that, the toll laws here in Colorado. So that's one thing I'm proud of. They were foreclosing on people's homes in a place called Green Valley Ranch, which is near the Denver International Airport. And basically, they were foreclosing because the law said that they could find they could fine you. So let's say you didn't take your trash can out, bring your trash can in, and they start charging you $25 a day, and that accumulated for so many number of days. Or you had grease stains on your driveway, they could then fine you for that. Or you didn't cut your grass, or you didn't paint your fence, things like that. And once they fined you and it accumulated to a certain dollar threshold, they could then pull you in court and start foreclosure. So this was really happening in Colorado. And so that was another area where we had to fight to overcome the tough lobby and the attorneys. And that was a bill that brought more transparency, and we abolished the ability for them to foreclose because of fines and fees. They can still foreclose for other reasons, but not for fines and fees, for covenant violations. So those are just a couple examples, and I've fought on many small business things, and we got some great bills that we have going through right now around junk fees and consumer protections.
I love everything you're fighting for. There's so many avenues I want to go down, but I know your time is limited. So, saying that, I am curious to learn, how do these bills that you are drafting yourself and you're passing, how do they come about? Is it just different things on the list that, because you're going everywhere from foreclosure to immigration to business laws to towing, things of that nature. So, like, how do you kind of prioritize, and uh, how does that process look?
So, some of the bills are brought to me. So, like, the immigration bill was one that was already happening. And I guess when I came in, because of my story as an immigrant, they thought I would be a good one to tell the story. So I got that bill. The HOA bill, which is the homeowners, because of my background as a mortgage broker and living in an HOA, that was something that I knew that people were experiencing and being foreclosed on. And so I wanted to create more equity. And so that was driven by some stories that were given to me by community members and then prior knowledge within the industry. The towing industry, my car actually got towed. And I went to go clean my car, and I found out that it was $300 within the first 24 hours. So my friend that drove me to the tow company to retrieve the car, I asked him, I said, "My God, I'm blessed to have the $300, but what about that average person who doesn't have this? What happens to them?" He says, "Oh man, they've been doing stories about towing all over the news." So I went on YouTube and I started watching that, and I saw that there were, and it was funny when me and Representative Edie Houghton, who ran the bill, brought the bill out. We were interviewed by a newscaster. He said, "Man, I've been doing these toll stories for 20 years." He said, what took you guys so long?" I said, "Well, I guess they were waiting for Representative Ricks to come." I don't know, but it was just, yeah. And so that's kind of how it is. It either comes from, a problem that you're aware, people write it and bring it to you, or is an issue that is pressing, or it could be, current issues that's driving things. Like right now in the Colorado State Legislature, what we're doing right now is we're trying to ensure that we're codifying laws that we feel that have been the protections that have been eroded in the federal government. We want to make sure that we enshrine them in Colorado statutes. So a lot of the things we're doing, like we're doing something around the Voting Rights Act. We're doing stuff. I just worked with Representative Sirota on a junk fees bill, because the CFPB has been dismantled at the federal level. So there's so much work. We just want to make sure that Coloradans still have these protections, and that as businesses and people are transacting, work business in Colorado, that they do have laws and that the Coloradans are protected. So that's a lot about how these different bills come about.
That's amazing. And they speaking with you for such a short time, I can already tell they have a great person fighting for them in Colorado and Aurora, Colorado. I lived in Denver for 2 years myself. I see myself settling down
Wow.
in Colorado when it's all said and done. Funny enough, I'm actually in
Yes.
Chicago at the moment. But yeah, no, it's been so great being able to speak with you. And since we only have a few minutes left here before we have to run, I would love to hear a few closing questions I'd like to ask everybody. And one of them is like, who have been some leaders that have made a big impact for you? And this could come from books, courses you took, childhood, but anyone that comes to mind there.
Sure. I would start with my mother, right? My mother was a phenomenal woman, and she's deceased. She died about 10 years after we came to the United States. But my mom was very strong, and she was my mom and father had been educated here, and then they went back to Liberia. And she was like one of the first few women to drive there. She actually took my dad to court for child support after they got divorced, and that was unheard of, I guess, in our society. So she was always very brave and kind of forward thinking and progressive. So I see that. I also would say that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is the first female president of I guess Africa, you would say, in a sense, and she is from Liberia. She's one of my mentors. Also, uh, I would say, Madam Shimbori. She is the African Union former ambassador to America from the African Union. And so I have many great mentors, and then women here around me that I get inspired by every day. I think, as women of color, when you're in these positions of power, you still get the same, you know passive aggressive, uh attitude from people, even within, the caucus, even around you. You're constantly having to fight and to almost prove yourself. So, so I get inspired by the people that I serve with every day as well.
Oh, that's amazing. We'd love to hear it. And then I know that we're at time here, but one last question for you. What do you have coming up? Like what's next here in the next 6 months or so?
So in the next 6 months, we'll be ending. So we're about 63 days into our session. By law, we legislate for 120 days. So by May 8th or 9th, we'll be ending. I have some great bills that are pushing forward. I have a bill coming up Thursday where I'm fighting for the independent liquor store owners. We passed a law by constitution that beer and wine could be sold in the supermarkets. So that has eroded the independent liquor mom and pop, stores as far as their market share. And we're trying to see if we can, you know, help them to continue to exist here in Colorado. So that's a big challenge. And also, for the chamber, we have our annual business awards coming up on March 29th, where we're going to be recognizing Woman-Owned Business of the Year, Corporation of the Year, Disruptor of the Year, African immigrant businesses and Black-owned businesses that are not typically recognized. This year, we have our keynote speaker will be Phil Washington from Denver International Airport. And then we're also recognizing Professor Rabata, who started the African American, and Caribbean Studies of University of Colorado Boulder. So we're excited. I mean, there's some great things coming up, and so yeah, those are some of the things we're looking forward to between now and then.
That's all so incredible, and I love everything that you're doing. And next time, hopefully, we'll have more time to be able to sit down. I'll come to Colorado and we can do it in person. I'm actually there a few
Yes.
times a year anyway, and again, I think that's where I'm gonna end up. It's such a wonderful place. But thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, and so I appreciate you carving out about 45 minutes here for us.
Oh my God, that went by quickly. But
I
thank you. I
know.
love Chicago too. I was there for the DNC, so that's always a great place. And one of my favorite uncles lives there, so Uncle Bob. So I didn't get to see him when I was there, but we talk all the time. So that's great. But if you're in Denver, and yeah, please look me up. I would love to connect.
Absolutely will. Absolutely will. And if you're back in Chicago, I could always there's a lot of in-person booths that I can get us set up in. All I gotta do is hit the record button and they'll do it all for us. But again, I appreciate your time so much. I love everything you're working on. Your story is truly incredible. I just did go by so fast. I mean, we could really be here for 3 hours and just I could keep asking questions. But we'll do it in the future. In the future.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Take
thank
care.
you. You too.
Uh-huh. Bye bye.